Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Thriving Doctors podcast. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Alice Diver. Looking forward to our conversation, Alice, today.
Me too, Simon. Thank you for having me back again. It's good to see you.
Great to have you back. So, I don't know, is it a £5 million question or a $17 trillion question? What does healing mean to you, Alice?
Oh, okay. It means, I guess, several things. Um, I think it's a good thing to have. I don't think personally that I'm at that stage yet. Um, I'm very pleased for people who are healed and who are happy to tell me how they did it and how it happened and so on. Me personally, I think it's ongoing. Um, I'm not sure, and I know this is going to sound slightly negative. I'm not sure if adoptees ever fully heal from the thing, from sort of what happened to us at birth, before birth, and ongoing. I think we see rejections and triggers and so on everywhere. Equally, that could just be me. But I think coping, if you haven't got healing, at least I think I'm quite good at coping. So I'll give it that. Whether that means I'm healed or just very grumpy or, in need of something, then, I'm open to being told. But those are my thoughts. I know sometimes things heal over. You think they're healed, but they're actually scar tissue, or there's something underneath the thorn didn't come out. Those are my negative thoughts with which to begin.
Okay. So, is then, based on what you said, is then an absence of any perceived rejection, would that be one indicator of being whole? So do you think you said see rejection everywhere, right?
Yeah.
Which we all know that, right? That's a song that we all know. I think I've called it the projection of rejection for me, right? So do you think if we are do you think that not seeing any rejection would be a part of being whole?
Yes, possibly, because sometimes they are, but I would call them micro rejections. I think life is made up of them where you don't get something, or a friend falls out with you, or something, or people are rude on the street, or something just triggers. Sometimes that's maybe down, I admit, to myself being, sensitive or hypersensitive. So there's that.
Yeah.
Don't know. I would love to be at the stage where I would be oblivious to slights or triggers and so on. But I think we remain vigilant. I don't know. That could just be me. But I know other adoptees who are a bit like that as well. So it's a bit like you're seeing that you're trying to predict. You're on guard because you think, or maybe like an abused child, you think, I've got to be very careful. I'm walking on eggshells and I have to not say this. And here's what might happen. So I'm going to break up with you first, or I'm going to stop being your friend before you can hurt me, etc., etc. I know I've heard other adoptees talk about this. So it's a thing. Will I always see little rejections? I probably will, because I'm negative in that way, but I'm also, I'm also, that's the coping. I don't know if I'm better than I used to be, put it that way.
Yeah.
I used
Yeah.
to be a lot worse. Now I'm just mildly grumpy most of the time. So I guess that's progress.
Yeah, it certainly sounds like progress to me. The things coming to my mind is that we put conditions on this status of healing, don't we? We put, yeah, and what if we didn't? Now that's a really big question. But rather than just kind of sidestepping the question completely, or what some people call, I think they call it spiritual bypassing, right? As you were talking about the rejection stuff, I remembered something. So this was a memory from 40 years ago that I saw in a completely different light about 4 months ago, right? So I was 17, I was walking back from the pub, and I saw a girl that I'd been out with a couple of times, and then who had dumped me, right? I saw her walking towards me, with her, but we were still kind of friends. We'd been sort of friends before. I saw her walking towards me with her with a mum and her new boyfriend. And this boyfriend was like 4 inches taller than me and really big, muscly, wide guy, right? And she didn't acknowledge me as we passed on the pavement. And I said to her, "Don't say hello, then, Fiona. Don't say hello, then, Fiona." Right? So I'd had a few drinks, right? So I was obviously, my tongue had been slightly loosened, and she carried on walking. They all carried on walking, and then about 5 minutes later, I turned around to talk to one of my friends, and as I did, this massive fist arrived in my face, and I went down like a bag of proverbial, right? So, and the guy was going to start kicking me on the ground, and a friend of mine, one of my friends, happened to know him, not very well, but he said, "Look, I think you've done enough, right?" And so he pulled away, and I had a really bad black eye and all sorts of, it wasn't great. I wasn't damaged any more than a black eye, but it took probably about 4 months to go. Now, I projected rejection. I'd said, "Don't say hello, then, Fiona." I thought that she'd blank me, right? And then, like not last month, about 4 months ago, something came to me when I realized that what she'd probably done is not acknowledge me because she knew this boyfriend was the jealous type with a loose cannon. And that's why she'd not said hello to me, because she didn't want to do anything to aggravate him, right? And in that moment, I saw that she hadn't been actually rejecting me as I thought. She'd been, in a way, she'd been maintaining the peace. And when I saw that, it took me 40 years. Can you believe that? It took me 40 years to see that, and then ping, in a moment, it's gone. And I think that those for me are those healing moments. And as you were talking about this rejection thing, I was thinking about this idea that I've never thought of before, right? That we're putting conditions. I'll be healed when. I'll be whole when. I'll be whole when I no longer feel triggered by people kind of rejecting me.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make?
It does. It does make sense. I think it's accurate, though. I think it's an accurate analysis for some people anyway. I don't know. It'll be interesting if I was tasked with coming up with a checklist, doing the lawyer bit now,
Yeah.
legislative welfare checklist. At what point have I ticked enough boxes to say, yeah, I'm good now and I'm healed now? Because I think I'm probably quite high functioning, and I'm a grandmother now with another on the way, and things are good, and I'm definitely not as angry as I was, decades or even a few years ago. Reunion, not perfect, but it's been good. It's been helpful. But I don't think I could honestly say I'm healed. And I think you can go having very good days. One thing could sort of set you off and take you back to being a teenager.
Yeah.
So, example, a friend falls out with you and stops speaking to you, or says something, sort of hurtful or whatever. And even though you're able to rationalize it, you're nearly 60 years old. I've got to catch myself on this is ridiculous, and I haven't done anything. Things happen. You just find, no, I'm gone. It's just like back to being a teenager again, when things maybe weren't so good and you weren't able to process, and you think, well, but coping mechanism, I was like, well, I'm going to go get a new tattoo. Running out of room now, but something just like legalized self-harm. So, that maybe ticks that sounds very dark. I don't mean it to be as dark. So I just think if you we've got layers of healing, but sometimes just something gets through them and there's a wee scratch and it can take you a while to climb back up again.
Yeah.
Then I think you're a bit more cautious then about you sort of go, maybe I need less people in my life, or maybe I need to be more guarded and put some walls up and hibernate a little for a while, which is probably not a good way to be, but I think it's whatever works.
Yeah.
That again, that sounds quite dark.
Well,
But
there's darkness and light there for sure. One of the things that popped out for me, you used the processing word. So is kind of more effective processing. Is that a sign of healing for you?
yes, to an extent, although I wonder, healing and coping, are they, I'm wondering, are they different concepts, or are they maybe a bit closer than we give them credit for? Could coping be disguised as healing and vice versa? That's interesting. And I don't know, because I'm not a psychologist. I would need, probably a professional person to guide me through it. But
Yeah, I think sometimes the professionals can definitely help. I think healing and coping to me has more of a kind. Yeah, it's not as profound. It doesn't sound as nice a word to me as healing.
no,
Coping seems like a strategy rather than healing. Is that insight thing. So in that little moment, when I saw that Fiona, that was the girl, when I saw that she hadn't rejected me, there was a kind of a buzz of, oh, I wasn't 40 years ago, I wasn't being rejected. Um, are there other moments in my life when
yes,
I have projected rejection that wasn't there, right? It wasn't there, or the action wasn't a rejection; it was something else. So her action was a what was it?
protective, really. She was being
Yeah,
protective of you to an
it
extent.
was it was a it was a yeah, it was protection. It was protection. There we are. I love a catchphrase. It was projection, not rejection.
Yes.
Yeah,
I could see that on a t-shirt. No, I suppose perception is everything, and then hindsight, because we definitely look at things differently as you get older. And I've definitely grown a thicker skin over the years. Um, but yeah, I still just, and I know how I would have other adoptees in the same position, just from conversations. They would say you could go for years and think, I am doing good and everything's fine and that's all in the past. And just one little thing can, does make things flare up. I suppose if it's like a physical, I mean, I have a bad ankle, which from time to time decides to spectacularly throw me into the pavement. So I wonder, is it a bit like that? If maybe I'm equating mental and physical a bit too closely, but to me, it's a bit like that. So you're fine. I was like shingles, you chicken pox, you get over it, and then it waits a couple of decades and can just, okay, now you've got shingles because I lived in your spinal cord and I'm back. But that's a bit gothic and a bit
yeah,
frightening. But I don't know. I think if you're, is it putting too much pressure on yourself to say, I'm healed now and I'm good? Does that stop you then from ever having a moment where you might need to sort of go, oh, okay, I got to take a day. I've got to, that this is a thing. And if I ignore it, because things that go away by themselves can come back by themselves. I wonder, are you putting it somewhere but not really dealing with it? I don't know. I'm a great fan of the darkness and the bleakness and
yeah,
the having a day to wallow. I always think to feel a lot. I love Beckett, because Beckett, he upsets you, but it's all about grief and grieving and you know weirdness. But in some ways, it's sort of therapeutic and cathartic. I don't know, but that's
yeah,
not everybody's cup of tea. I know I'm too much for some people. They just my kids will be like, now don't start. Do not start. You've spotted something in the TV show. There's something in a sitcom where adoption was the joke, and they'll see me just starting to levitate, and they'll go like, we know, it's not on. So, but
yeah.
That's just
The Gothic thing sums up that book. When I read the title of that book, the body keeps the score, right? That sounded me like the body keeps a score. It sounded Gothic, kind of as you were describing it. You know, it's lurking, right? So there's this trauma that has gone away, but it's lurking somewhere in my body, and it's going to jump out and get me and frighten the bejesus out of me. That's
and
what
other.
the title. That,
It might not. It may
and
never.
it might not.
It might not. But I just think it's probably. I know I'm a pessimist, but I think that way I'm never disappointed. I'm just always on the lookout. Like when you're driving, I think it's because so many times I've gone up, drive along the street and someone is coming in the opposite direction on a one-way street or something. If it can go wrong, it will go wrong. Not as pessimistic as it sounds. I just call it pragmatism, just being prepared for. Maybe I have a very low bar. I'm like, I get through today and I didn't fall over, or
Yeah,
I didn't make anybody cry. Today was not a bad day. I don't know.
so
That's a low bar, really. I'm actually
local.
much happier than I'm making out. It's just from time to time. Yeah.
Well, yeah, low bars. I mean, the bigger the goal, the easier it is to score, right? So making the bar and mixing the metaphors. What do you know? I'm thinking about where's the line between sensible sensible vigilance and hypervigilance. Do you know what I mean? That, like, where is that bar? I mean, where is that gap? It's a line that's drawn in. It's a line that's drawn in the sand, and we'll draw it. I guess we'll draw it in a slightly different place. Yeah.
Yeah. I
What?
do think we're different, though. I think as adoptees, I think we're, as I once said, we're a bit like rescue dogs. And I remember one friend being appalled by that and said, "How, don't describe yourself like that." And then others were sort of like, "That's maybe not a bad way, of self-labeling. It's maybe a bit defeatist, but you're sort of saying we are a bit, I think once you acknowledge that we have the hypervigilance or some differences, then you can sort of go, okay, I'll put them over there, and I know they're there, and I might not need to look at them now for a while, and then you go on. But maybe that's too defeatist, or I don't know. These are my thoughts.
Well, that's what we're doing, aren't we? We're just exchanging thoughts. I mean, is it the thing that's coming to my head is kind of like there's hypervigilance, and are we shaming ourselves there? Are we saying, is healing saying, well, it's hypervigilance, it's okay? Whereas the other one, we could be saying, I can't get any sleep. I've been awake for five weeks. I'm hypervigilant all the time, and like we're villainizing how we feel, and so given that, what healing would be villainizing our emotions less, having more grace for how we feel, not so make it about myself for a minute. So I used to be worry about worrying, or get angry about being angry, and there's a space where then I'm fueling the fire, right, rather than accepting the emotions. And it's a theme that comes back again and again, is on the podcast, that guests see that accepting rather than fighting our feelings is a sign of healing. Because we've numbed, we've stuffed, we've tried to push them away. We've been because we've been so worried that the wave of trauma is going to drown us, right? We've been trying to put our hand up against the wave, like that King Canute guy that we did in history. He put his hand up against the wave to try and stop the waves coming in, and clearly that's a completely pointless exercise, right?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. It's a difficult one. And then I wonder, is there a difference between, I know adoptees who've been to therapy, who are still in therapy, ones that would not go to therapy. I've never had it. I've been told a few times that I probably should go and see about it. But I wonder, does that make a difference on how you look back on stuff or how you see yourself situated within it?
Well, sometimes, I used this a while ago. The guy who is in a roundabout way responsible for me doing the podcast. It was a mentor guy of mine like 10 years ago. He said it's hard to see the picture when we're in the frame. Hard to see the picture when we're in the frame. So a third party perspective can help, and I guess that's why a therapist or a coach can help us. But what we're doing here is like we're talking about perspectives on healing, and you're sharing your perspective on healing. I'm sharing a little bit of my perspective on healing, some of the perspectives I've heard from other guests, and in that way we can kind of look at our perspective and say, without having to pay to go to a therapist, we can look at our perspective and say, well, is there something in what Alice said there? I mean, that's the purpose of the podcast, is for me to as I saw it, for me, is to kind of ask the guests about their perspective on healing, their perspective on thriving, and see if anything that's helped the guest can help the listener. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to offer a different perspective on it. And in particular, I feel that what I'm trying to do now is healing education. We've had so much trauma education in the books, right? We've had so much trauma education in the books, or from videos that we've watched, or stuff that we've seen on Facebook. We've had loads of trauma education. Let's focus on healing education. Let's focus on healing perspectives, in the hope that our shifts in perspectives may catalyze a shift in perspective for the listener. So, do any kind of healing moments come to mind? So the moments where you've had those shifts in perspective.
Definitely. I mean, I suppose I'm sort of being too negative, and I'll try to, sort of see some of the positives. I mean, I suppose the big moment was obviously reunion 7 years ago now with the maternal side of the family. That was a very, very positive experience, and that definitely helped put a few demons to rest. Now, again, that has to come with the proviso of, quite often think reunion is the be all and end all. It's, there's your birth certificate, off you go. There's your family. You should be happy now. You found them. It only took you 50 years. So, no, it's good, but it's not. If I'm expecting perfection and for a line to be drawn, it's an ongoing thing. It's an ongoing process, but it's definitely helpful. I'm very much in favor of repatriation, of redress. And again, there's so much that happening in various places around the world where they're trying to work out, how do you heal a generation? How do you heal a group of people who have been mistreated and violated and everything else? And I see different examples of it. Well, do we have memorial? Do we give them money? Do we put time limits on? Do we give them some extra support? And it's good that there is, I guess, a bit of a realization that people need more than just the bit of paper, or there's the name, off you go and search, or there's the reunion, be careful because it could break down. I think it's good that they're realizing that adult adoptees do need a bit more. You need to talk to other adoptees, and have support groups are great. I only joined one a few months ago. That's another moment. But and again, it's the kind of place where people talk about anything. So it's quite good. It can go a bit dark. There's sometimes emotions can run high, so there may be some not sharp exchanges, but sometimes people get upset and talk. It's only a small group, but that has been, that sounds awful. You feel quite wrung out by the end of it, but I look forward to that. So because you're just among kindred spirits, and some will come and go, and you can see people from week to week, often healing and getting better. But it's nice to know that it's there, because sometimes they'll come back after a while away and say, well, my reunion's broken down, or something has happened, or I've discovered this, and they just need to come back into that safe space. So that would be one. Let me think what else. I mean, having children was, something that I highly recommend. Having a grandchild was kind of, I know, because I'm falling into the stereotypical granny of, I am a granny, I have a grandchild, she's very cute. But that, to me, that's amazing, because I could see she looks like my aunt. She's a wee small brown round thing. So that's nice. When I look at her and I could sort of say, well, you look like all these Canadian cousins and the ancestors. She's quite indigenous looking, which, is nice for
Yeah.
Northern Ireland. So there's lots, yeah, I can point to lots of things that are healing, but I can't yet say that I'm at that level of having been healed. I think I'm doing well. I think I'm doing okay, but it's just occasionally something will come along to floor you a little, and you think, whoa, where did that come from, and why am I, feeling like I felt 40 odd years ago when times were very dark. But you can pull yourself out of it. But I think it's important to notice if, when something like that's happening, that you can then maybe seek help.
Yeah.
Sounds awful, help. But I don't know, is that
Is the support group, you said it was a small group. Do you meet in person? Do you meet online? How does it work?
online, which in some ways is good, because I think if you were in person, I don't know, I think sometimes people maybe open up a little more online because they can be comfortable. They haven't had to leave the house. You're in your space. You can stop and get a drink of water. You can sort of come and go. If it's getting too much, you can go and have a moment. And I think
Yeah.
just, yeah, I think that's a very good thing.
And how many people are on the
It
call list?
varies. It varies you know, from meeting to meeting. Sometimes you get quite a big attendance, other times it's smaller. So
So that on average, I mean, what does it range? Does it range from 6 to 20, or
yeah, I would sort of fall into that. So um, and obviously we're sort of bound by,
of course.
confidentiality, not sort of
Yeah, yeah,
too
yeah,
much about it. But it's a nice manageable number, and from month to month it could change in composition. So some people are there a lot, others you might only see once or twice. Like if something has annoyed them, they'll come in.
yeah.
So I think that's important too. It's a nice safety net. Um, so no, it's good. It's good to hear the other stories, because you feel a lot less alone. Sometimes you think you're the only person that had the fear or the dark thoughts, and then you'll hear somebody else and think, oh, it's okay to feel like that. They have the same. They're feeling the same.
Yeah.
They're sensitive to this kind of stuff too, and that's quite validating. You sort of think, okay, this is good.
Yeah.
So safety in numbers. We flock. I like it when we find a
Well,
flock or a tribe or
yeah.
whatever. I can say tribe because of the indigenous
Yes,
connection, but I like yeah, having a clump. I don't know what the collective noun is for a group of adoptees. You
that's
know,
a good one, isn't it?
there's your next podcast. What can we call ourselves?
Yeah. Have you got a suggestion off the top of your head?
I'll think about it. I don't want to say an anger of adoptees. I don't know, a justification of it. It's really, I'm no
Oh,
good at those sort of things. We've got the murder of crows. We don't want that. I'll have to think of a gratitude of adoptees, because we have
uh,
to be sort of. I have a problem with gratitude. I hate being told to be grateful, and I am very grateful for everything. But yeah, there's just sometimes it rankles a bit. Um,
yeah. We're talking. There's a lot of that coming up at the moment, and that kind of like the difference between spontaneous gratitude from within and enforced gratitude from without. People, and I don't think any of us like to be told what to do
it rankles with
or
me
think. Yeah, it really gets us, and it's the opposite, isn't it? It's the invalidation.
big time. Yeah, it does
The
it.
invalidation. Yeah. You talked about expecting perfection in reunion, which, as you know, well, it's clear, isn't it? I like a bumper sticker. So, what can you expand a bit on that? On how you think expectations influence what's going on for us? What's the link? Is there a link between expectations and healing? How do you see it?
But I think literature and law, they have a lot, I think have a lot to answer for. The classic tale, I don't want to say fairy tales because they're too dark, but the happy movie, the happy end. I'm recently, let me think, Handmaid's Tale, the sequel. Spoiler alert if anybody's watching it, but with the testaments, you've waited for two books and a whole bunch of terrifying things, and then just in the final few pages it's like reunion, and then just fades to black. There's so many books where I see that happening. So it's the cutoff point. It's like the old and they lived happily ever after, and then it ends. You don't get to say, well, how did that marriage work out? Did they struggle? How did that reunion go? Did they stay in the honeymoon? And I just think we get the expectation then that it's okay from here on in. I've found family, or I've got my answers, or I've got whatever. And therefore, it's like an apology being with the line being drawn under of, you've got your apology, what more do you want? Or you've got your compensation, go away. But this line is drawn, and we have to be just kind of, that's you, you're fine now. We know that that's not the case. Things can, sometimes things are great and they will go on great. But I think, yeah,
Yeah,
sort of we have a cultural or a societal way of drawing lines under things that I don't think lines can be erased. And there is an expectation of it. You must be happy now. And as you say, gratitude, we've kind of been raised to be grateful for having been taken in. Was told over the years, you're very lucky, you had very good parents. They were very good up to a point. They were good. They were not perfect. Or aren't you lucky you found your family after all these years? Isn't it beautiful? And I will say it's nice. It's going well. There are triggery moments where it's, but you crush it down because you don't want to break it. We're very good at walking on eggshells. So, I'm complaining to you because you're my friend. You're very privileged to hear the complaints. But yeah, I would be tempering this if someone was saying, isn't that great that that's happening? How lovely. I'll go, yeah, yeah. Because 99% of the time it is. But then there's that 1% that I think maybe just cuts a bit deeper because I think we're maybe covered in more scar tissue than most. But that's, it's still healing. It's still healing. But I think, it's the fact that we need to heal, whereas sometimes the kept didn't, and they have their own problem, and that's terrible to call non-adoptees the kept. They have their own problems. Families can be dangerous no matter what the scenario. But I still do think I think we're that wee bit different, that we just need a little extra time, extra healing, extra understanding. I don't know. Those are
yeah.
those are my
Are they?
thoughts.
As you were thinking, as you were talking about that, I was thinking, do they want to? Is it because are they saying it because they want to feel better?
I think so. I think society, as we know, we used to get hidden away. The illegitimate, we used to get put behind a wall or shipped to another country or buried at a crossroads. And that went very dark all of a sudden. I know, sorry. But I think we scare people. We think of all you know, the the folklore that is attached to us, the history of, oh, they've got unknown ancestry. Don't know where they came from. Are demon seed mythologies, are they to be trusted? Are they angry? They do get angry. We have a lot of that I don't know if people maybe always would say to us. I don't like being the punchline. There's a lot of jokes. There's a lot to be answered for there, which I think needs to stop. But yeah, so I think there's that, which makes us also more cautious of.
Yeah. So it's for
Mm.
their benefit, not ours.
I think so. I think society probably feels. I don't. I think society feels a bit of guilt at the fact that adoption has to happen. So, like our generation, it had to happen because you couldn't have the unmarried mother, you couldn't have the illegitimate child. That's society's failing. Mothers didn't have enough money. Society let them down. Probably let a lot of us down by saying, "Well, there you go, and you don't need your birth certificate." That's not a sign of a good. So I think there probably is that guilt at the level of the state or the church. The fact that they're apologizing.
Yeah.
Um, hmm.
You're talking about different cultures and countries, and you mentioned before we before I hit the record button that you've been over to the States for a conference. Do you see any differences in American versus Brit adoptees?
I think in some ways we're lucky here in the UK. Obviously, you can get your original birth certificate a bit more easily. There's some in the States, Canada, there's still efforts to open the records, and same with Ireland as well. But there's still a lot of people that will. I'm not going to get mine, even though I found, you know, maternal side of the family, because she signed a veto in the 1980s, and she has said to them, birth mother. She doesn't mind the terminology. She's okay with the term. She's said, but no, I've been to Ireland. She's been here. Can you give her birth certificate? And they said, no, that veto was forever. The one that you signed in the 1980s. So that's the ridiculous nature of the law, which also makes me angry. I think also over there as well. So I think the fact that people can't get their birth certificate is a barrier. There's some people that just can't find reunion. DNA works sometimes. I think difference with the UK as well. Don't forget the baby scoop over there. So there's a lot of the indigenous, race needs to be factored in, the poverty. But over here, I suppose we have the cross-border aspects of children being transported and hidden away. The US as well will probably have more international adoptees. So that brings with it a whole lot of sort of separate issues. So it's a rich tapestry,
Yeah.
the whole thing, the loss of ancestry and identity.
There's a whole load of different things there. The ones that have occurred to me are the wealth. The reason I asked the question was because you were talking about welfare, right? And in the UK we have a bigger safety net. Have we got a big? Is our welfare state a bigger safety net than it is in the States?
I think up to a point, because yeah, I mean, I wonder when we look back on this period of time with food banks and with more poverty, poverty is always a trigger for neglect, because there's a fine line between your child is undernourished, well, it was food or heat, your child is cold, their clothes aren't washed. Is that neglect, or is it that you couldn't afford to run the washing machine and buy soap? So I don't know. I think there's a bit of blurring. I know the UK has a name for having speedier adoptions and calling for speedier adoption. You cut the time limits. And I can see that child protection, yes, there are times when child can't stay with birth parents, but it does have, if you look at the rest of Europe, the UK is sort of seen as being a bit quick to act. Is there a move towards open adoptions here? In theory, yes. But again, open adoption could be letterbox once a year. So there's a lot of blurring
Yeah.
that goes on.
What about the fact that adoptive parents pay in the States, whereas the state pays in the UK?
Yeah, it's quite a lucrative business. And I have issues with children with us having maybe been commodified, or put the label on in that way. I mean, that's the debate, I think, is getting opened up when we see surrogacy happening more. It puts a lot of things into the mix. At what point do we sort of tip into this industry? We know adoption's been an industry for a very long time. The children used to be hidden, and then they discovered what I'm thinking of Ireland, and then suddenly the 1940s, 50s, movie stars decide we could adopt a child, lovely, bring this little Irish baby over, and then the church realizes, oh, you know what, this is lucrative. So maybe instead of silently sending them away, we could repackage this as, here is a lovely baby. And they did. We know that money was made from that. It's all in the spin, really.
Yeah. I feel that what you call that commodification, I feel that's a big thing. I think that's a big thing. It would be me just seeing a price list of babies a couple of years ago made me want to be sick.
Yeah.
So
So
how it would feel if I'd uncovered, for example, the documentation in my parents', the drawers in the attic that they never go into, and I found that there'd been a price on my head.
you don't know. There could have been a donation might have been made to the church if it was church welfare. There was a lot of, records were not always kept that well. You make a donation. We're not selling you a baby, but make a donation. I do know, I don't know how much I cost, but I know I was black market. I would like to think I was, not perfect because I was about 7 months. So there was, whether it was the indigenous deafness, there was some flaw that kept me for 7 months in the, I don't want to say the home, because they're not home, like the institution. But I know there was a black market fee paid. My sources tell me something was paid, but finding the evidence is tricky. But I'll tell you what really bothers me is the rehoming. If we're saying about sort of the US, Reuters did a study on this, or have done over the last few years, of the giving back of a child. So we've had them for a while, it's not working out, and then they're advertised with like puppies, and that upsets me. But yeah, there's a lot that's less than ideal.
Well, I've just seen one story about that. I've not seen any statistics, but I was being interviewed by a Brit adoptee, Annalisa Takara, who's doing she's doing a PhD. She's doing a PhD in social media, social media and adoption. Yeah,
she's great, actually. She's great. I'm glad she's doing it. It's good. It needs to be done. It's a good survey. Yeah.
So I did that. I was interviewed by her as part of her research at the weekend, and at some point I found myself ranting about the rehoming story. So there's something for me. It was, I don't use the word triggering very often, but I was, right. So I'm going to have a little bit of a think about. That, and I'm seeing a mainly somatic therapist at the moment, and I might, when I see her in a couple of weeks, I might bring that up. Rehoming. That's going to make us sick as well.
Yeah. There's a lot to poke at. You know what I mean? There's creeping below the surface. There's it never fails to amaze me. Sometimes I think, well, I've heard it all now, and then read about the rehoming, or I won't even talk about Ukraine and the fast-tracked passports, the children that are being labeled as abandoned when they're not. So there's that going on. But again, to play devil's advocate, one good thing that might come out of all these bad things, if it makes others aware that they need to be nicer to us, if it makes the lawmakers aware that these things matter, that we do need a bit of extra accommodation, or people need to cut us some slack sometimes, because this is not normal. The things, you're set things that we went through, not normal. And I just think people need to not, they just need to take a bit of care. Don't do the micro rejections. So if you're not included in something, or as you say, if someone walks past and doesn't speak, it just cuts a bit deeper with us. It's that we sort of think, oh, here we go, there, the abandonment again. And the average person, the kept person, can sort of go, yeah, it's fine, never liked you anyway. We will sort of go, oh, what is wrong with me, and what's going to happen next? I don't know. That's me anyway, just not speaking for others.
You've just taken me to the solution, to the reason for my upset with the rehoming. That was a reminder of abandonment.
Oh, big time, big time. Did you ever
I hadn't seen it. You helped me see that, by the way. Sorry, that's one.
Oh, I can always spot the dark. I can find the darkness in anything. My husband says, you can find the darkness. I'm like, yes, but once you found it, you can put it over there and switch on a light. That's sort of my healing. But I have a question, but feel free not to answer it. But I have found this with other adoptees, that in childhood at some point, and I have this in common with a lot of people, that your adoptive family might have been saying, they would have been saying it in jest usually, would have made a throwaway remark like, oh, I'll send you back, or you need to go back to whatever it is. And I would have said it from time to time. I was not a bad teenager. I read books a lot. I was a good kid. I was grumpy, but I was a good child. But yeah, there was the threat of, we could send you back. And I have friends who this was said to, but it may have been said in jest. But the fear that it, and certain sounds or smells that could spark off just absolute abject terror of, I have a friend who's scared still of the bin lorry, because they would mix it up when they were young, not very young, but they mixed it up with the sound of like the child catcher. Oh, is this the truck that comes around to take adoptees back? or whatever. You know, so, and it's completely irrational, but it's some kind of primal fear of that's the sound it would make. It's just the bin lorry. You weren't getting put in the bin. Does that make sense? It's a bit dramatic, I know, but it's amazing how many adoptees have a memory at some point in their childhood of someone saying to them, you know, we'll send you back. Maybe not, and it wasn't said in seriousness, but but you know, it just did enough to unsettle us. So I don't know.
So, uh, luckily, I was never told that. On the, but this is how sensitive I feel that we can be, or I can be. Right? Um, I don't like that when my wife says that to a dog, that to one of the dogs that's misbehaving.
Oh no, 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 no. So no, you can't. No, that's yeah. That would make me yeah. Because there's no way you wouldn't send that dog back. It would have to be like it would have to be like attacking you before you would send it back. And even then, you probably wouldn't because you just we
But
can't. We can't.
I wouldn't say it.
No, don't even think it. We don't abandon things. We collect books. We don't throw out this. I never throw out a book, and it drives my family nuts. And they're all, it's a book, and I'm like, but it might be lonely. I can't get rid. No, I bought it, so it stayed on the shelf. Should it go moldy? We just, I don't know. I think it's a tendency to be project onto others. I don't know.
Yeah,
Oh. And your dogs look lovely and happy because I've seen them on Facebook.
yeah.
Probably
Well,
like,
they have their moments misbehaving, right? They have their moments, but I would never say that to them, even in jest. No.
yeah,
Um,
resonates too much with us, I think.
yeah, it sounds so. We've had we've got our third and fourth dog now, right? So we got one dog 25, 26 years ago, maybe something like that. And then she died when she was about 12. We got another one. She died about 11, 12. Um, but the third one, oh, we're just on our fourth. We're third and fourth. But the fourth one didn't, Indy, she never cried at night. She never cried at night when she was little, like even the first night away from her mum. But other dogs have, and that's been spine chilling.
Yeah, yeah. I would say triggery. It's just the way we can relate to the horror, and you think, yeah, did we must have gone through something like that because we're mammals at the end of the day, and it's horrific, it's horrible,
And
but then it turns out okay because
yeah,
you get to keep the doggy, you get to mother it, and
and although I know it's spine chilly, I know that the more I think about it, the worse it can seem to get. Right? I can start creating all sorts of.
mm,
I've had that spine chilly moment. I must admit to being a little bit angry at because they've interrupted my night's sleep, right? And as I say that, how can I be angry with them about being upset? But that's the truth. Um, but I know that I could make that I could make that spine chilling moment a lot worse with my imagination.
yeah, I know what you mean, and you have to be. It's not the that wouldn't be the easiest of things to go through. You know what I mean? And some people probably would pick it all apart and say, right, I'm just gonna have all the feels, and then I'm gonna tomorrow I'm having a duvet day, and after that I might feel better. Or I think, or you might think, no, I'm gonna soldier on because that is what it is, and I can't go down that path. So not every path can you go down, if that makes any sense. There's times there is a danger that you go. I remember you saying about the tunnel, a posting that you had once before, and you said it's okay to you go down a tunnel, but sometimes you have to turn around and come back. I'm probably the maniac that would keep going in the tunnel and end up having to be rescued and pulled out by the feet, just either out of curiosity or out of let's just see what happens, which is not ideal either. But you know,
That's what
those
we
are different types of healing or different types
do.
of
Yeah.
coping. I don't
What
know.
What do you think gets in the way of our healing?
Oh, I can give you the lawyer answer. I could give the lawyer answer. I will feel more healed when I see that the law is affording us more respect and equality and equity and parity of esteem and everything else, that would help me greatly. I'd quite like to find the paternal side of my birth family out of curiosity as well. Oh, I could have a bunch of other siblings on that side. So there's various things. I think the more grandchildren I have, the more healed I'm going to be. Time is doing its thing. Um, if I'm being very honest, there's always going to be a bit that's not healed for me personally, but I've made peace with that. If that's maybe not too defeatist or realistic,
No,
it's
I
just,
don't think that's. I think that's the point,
mm,
right? If we're, this is a bit of a tongue twister, but I'm saying what you said in 2 words in a few more, right? If we're okay with not feeling okay, we're always okay.
yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, that I
But
can. Mm.
if we can, I was just writing something before we spoke about. I talked about resolution being healing, and meeting your bio family on the paternal side would be an example of one of those resolutions. Um, and there's also the being at peace with the lack of answers,
Mhm.
being at peace and making peace with the fact that the puzzle will never be fully finished.
Yeah,
It's kind of that, to me, that is the epitome of healing, because healing is peace.
yeah, and it's an ongoing process, I guess. If you think of your skin's always repairing itself, despite the fact that I've gone a bit wrinkly now. But I get, yeah, I suppose if you think of it like that, that it's always having to do something. But deafness is getting worse. It's not going to be healed. But with the hearing aids, I cope and I hear enough, and I'm able to switch them off if it's nighttime or matrimonial arguments,
Push it off, yeah.
football. So, but the ears aren't healed, but the ears are happy enough and they cope. But if I ever lost the hearing aids, that would be, you know, not good and frightening. I do have a tendency to sleep through alarms and step in front of buses, but it's okay. But so it's strange. Yeah, I think yeah, we sort of agree.
Yeah, peace. Finding peace is, for me, that's the
Mm,
peace. Like you talked about expecting perfection in reunion, and expecting expecting perfect thoughts and perfect feelings. It's this. It all comes down to expectations. People have been on the show and they've said, "Well, I'm not a thriving adoptee, Simon, because I sometimes feel bad." Well, I never said that thriving adoptees always feel good. I never said that. We put conditions on, and clearly I do it as well. Right? I'm not blaming the other person. Um, so, is there anything? What are your thoughts on that peace thing that I've been witching on a bit?
maybe it's because maybe it's a Northern Ireland thing, because we've had peace now for a while, but it's an uneasy peace. You'd never ask who won because nobody's quite sure that anybody won, but it's better than like the troubles are essentially over. So that's a good thing. But it's an uneasy piece because every now and again something can flare up. So obviously there's been the Brexit things of where is the border? Is it in the sea or is it on land? What does it mean? Um, yeah, it's an uneasy, evolving thing. Um, so it's peace. Yeah, it's peace. It passes for peace.
Yeah,
And 90% of the time it's great. And I remember I was here in the 80s. It's an awful lot better, different world, different city, Belfast now. But it would be very foolish to think that everything's fine because, something could happen with a flag tomorrow. It wouldn't take much for everything to be like, whoa, they're burning cars again. just things, but I think if you're aware of that, you have the sensitivity to say, I will proceed with caution. So, workplaces are careful to have things neutral and so on and so forth. Yeah, that's an interesting one. But I live in a crazy place, so I don't know if we can, maybe Northern Ireland is like epitomizing the sort of the lost child of England and Ireland, and it's sort of sitting here going, which one of you wants me? So
Yeah,
maybe it's the ultimate adoptee. There's an article on that now somewhere. So,
brilliant. Thanks, Alice. Thanks so much.
no
Thanks,
worries.
listeners. We'll speak to you very soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay, thanks, Em. Bye.